The human body is a masterpiece of nature's engineering, a symphony of complexity and resilience. The human body performs incredibly complex functions on a daily basis. The wonders of the human body are evidence of a very intelligent designer and creator. He created it as a tabernacle for our spirits, to assist each of us in our quest to fulfill the full measure of our creation. Our bodies allow each of us to experience the great plan of salvation that He has designed for all His precious children. It is said that God created man in His own image. But there is a duality in the way we conceive and perceive our reality. The spiritual, formless nature where the Father figure of God reigns, and the physical, material nature identified by the Mother figure, known as Mother Nature, Mother Earth, or the Matrix. If you understand this concept, then you'll understand how our world works, in its nature and history. You'll be able to understand the events that correspond exactly to the physiology of the human body, in the relevant part of it. But you'll also be able, like a doctor detecting symptoms and anticipating their consequences, to understand future events in our world. That's why I'm here, to understand and share with you. Now, most of the events in our history, at least at the beginning, were natural, in the sense that only the Creator was able to direct them. Until the world was taken over by a certain category of elites, who, in opposition to the Creator, and by imitation, gave themselves the right to provoke and create events, such as wars or so-called natural disasters, with the sole aim of identifying with and replacing the Creator. Wanting to create an entity in their own image, just as the Creator created us in His image, they create their events in such a way as to shape their new artificial world. Thus, replacing the Creators, by giving it the appearance of their will. They also want to break our link with the Creator, which is made possible by our pineal gland, which, like an antenna, enables us to communicate with the immaterial world. Their aim is to hack this antenna, by covering it with an obscure veil and, thus, take control of it and our human body through technology. Not only that, but they want to modify our DNA in order to transform us into the image of their god, Satan. In other words, they want to create an inferior race under total control. They, the elite of course, reserve for themselves the technology to increase their own intellectual and physical capacities and achieve eternal life. The technology used to modify us is not that complicated. Let's start by noting that zinc and copper are two elements that are antagonistic in their physiological functions, but are also neighbors or brothers in the periodic table of elements. This means they can be easily confused by the molecules and proteins that make up our cells. To understand how our DNA works, we can draw an analogy with a magnetic strip. This magnetic strip is our DNA, which contains all the information necessary for our development. But a magnetic strip has to be read, so we need a reading head to read the information. This reading head is an agglomerate of specific proteins called a transcriptor. This transcriptor will create the protein to be read on the DNA, just as the playback head captures the sound or video from the magnetic tape. However, in some cases, you also need a play button to start reading, which translates into a protein called an activator. This activator must bind to a specific domain of the DNA, and at the same time, it must bind to the transcriptor to transmit the startup information to the transcriptor, like a bridge linking them. It's important to understand that the transhumanist elite's aim is to modify our DNA to make men more docile and controllable. The aim of this DNA modification, or rather, suppression of the expression of certain genes, specifically those determining male reproductive organs, is to reduce aggressiveness in men by genetic castration and using intravenous gene technology. Now, there are two genes essential for testicular activation and production. First, the SRY gene. The SRY, or sex-determining region of Y chromosome gene, is located on the short arm of the Y chromosome and is responsible for male gonad differentiation. In males, XY, the SRY gene activates production of the SOX9 protein, which leads to testicular development. Females, XX, lack this gene and do not develop testes. The SRY gene is directly activated by its transcriptor, GATA4. The second essential gene is enhancer 13. It is a small DNA sequence located more than 500,000 bases from the SOX9 gene. This element acts as an enhancer of SOX9 protein production at the crucial moment of development, triggering testis formation. Unlike the SRY gene, the enhancer 13 gene requires an activator or play button to initiate transcription of a protein, which in turn amplifies SOX9 production. When enhancer 13 or SRY gene is genetically deleted in male, they develop ovaries and female genitalia. This discovery could explain why some people with XY chromosomes can have female sex organs. Moreover, there is a specific part in the activator protein and in the SRY protein that binds to the DNA. It is called the zinc finger domain, which, as its name suggests, contains zinc. In a way, it plays the role of your finger pressing down on the reading head. This is where copper can be confused with zinc, and thus no longer perform its function. Hence, the inoculations containing copper. In other words, the copper injected by the inoculations will replace the zinc contained in the zinc fingers, preventing the desired binding to DNA. Finally, the production of SOX9 proteins will be greatly reduced, and the male sex reversed to female. But SOX9 plays an important role in the brain as well. SOX9, expressed in neurogenic niches, plays an important role in neuron to glia switch, with predominant expression in astrocytes in the adult brain. Astrocytes are a subtype of glial cells that make up the majority of cells in the human central nervous system. They perform metabolic, structural, homeostatic, and neuroprotective tasks such as clearing excess neurotransmitters, stabilizing and regulating the blood-brain barrier, and promoting synapse formation. In other words, they protect and clean the brain. In summary, SOX9 deficiency in the brain leads to loss of synaptic plasticity, to impaired astrocytic function, reduced astrocyte numbers, and effects on neuronal development and the blood-brain barrier. And, thus, greatly reduced intelligence and memory. Now that we know the consequences of copper injections, we can analyze the events and clues that correspond to these phenomena. Eurovision, a European song contest, is awash with clues leading to the processes described before. Of course, those who create these great events show us these hidden clues, without people even being able to imagine what it's really all about, and everything is already programmed and planned. Now, these events that they program are in correlation with the clues they show us in the media, and correspond to man's physiological processes. Let's not forget that the very geography of our world is a mirror image of our human body. Since what happens in our bodies must also happen in our world, they provoke the appropriate events in our world as well. But they can't provoke these events without showing them to us in a discreet way, in order to obtain our consent. The first consequence of copper toxicity is the covering of the pineal gland, the antenna for the communication with the divine. Now, remember that copper is necessary for the production of melanin, which, in excess, causes a dysregulation of melanocytes, and thus, an excess production of melanin. This excess melanin invades the cerebrospinal fluid until it covers our pineal gland in our brain. The center of the pineal gland contains a vibrating diamond which is zirconium, and this diamond corresponds to the country of Luxembourg. The pineal gland body surrounding its diamond is Germany. It is Germany that must therefore be symbolically covered with pollution, just as the pineal gland is covered by melanin. This is why they hide clues in media productions like the Eurovision, to communicate them to us. During this song contest, they show us their intentions in the video clips. Remember that the brain stem represents Jesus, whose head is the pineal gland, corresponding to Germany and Luxembourg, the diamond at its center. Note that his 12 apostles represent the 12 cranial nerves emanating from the brain stem. Luxembourg being the center of the coming event, the video clip of the Luxembourg interpreter shows us all these clues. The event program for the pollution of Luxembourg and Germany, and therefore, by analogy, corresponding to the covering of the pineal gland, is the explosion of the Cattenom nuclear power plant, which lies close to the German and Luxembourg border in France. The interpreter of Luxembourg is of Israeli origin, therefore Hebrew, like Jesus. She falls in the video several times, which corresponds to the fall of Jesus. This is particularly evident when she climbs the stairs. She's also at the center of the cube. The cube represents the limbic system, with the pineal gland at its center. Her name is Tali Galergant. Tali means lamb, which is a representation of Jesus and his sacrifice. Galergant comes from gal, which in Hebrew means yellow, or bile. When red blood cells break down, due to copper toxicity in blood, a substance called bilirubin is formed, and gives jaundice. The yellow bile invades the eyes, including the third eye, which is the pineal. And erga means work, in the sense of fighting, so Galergant means one who fights bile, hence evil. So, it makes sense that the title of her song is Fighter. In addition, here we see melanin invading and surrounding the pineal and its diamond, which is the singer, representing Luxembourg. Germany is also the center of the cube, representing the body of the pineal gland, and the torso of Jesus, the upper part of the brain stem. As a result, we also see the performer singing in the center of a cube, which is also in flames, symbolically representing the neurological inflammation of the brain stem, Jesus. His name is Isaac Guderian. Isaac means he who laughs. The center of joy and laughter is located in the tegmentum, the dorsal part of the brain stem. Guderian is a shortened form of Guder Yen, meaning good John, so God is gracious, another reference to Jesus as God. The United Kingdom represents the hippocampus, another important part of the limbic system, center of intellect, memory, and balance. We see LGBT performers, looking totally disconnected from reality at the center of a vacillating cube, demonstrating the loss of intellect, disconnection from reality or dizziness, and gender reassignment in men. The singer's name is Ollie Alexander. Ollie refers to the olive fruit. This fruit helps sleeping, thanks to its components tryptophan, magnesium, calcium and vitamin B6, minerals and vitamins, involved in the production of the melatonin hormone. Melatonin plays a neuroprotective role in the hippocampus, reducing oxidative stress, particularly for hippocampal pyramidal cells. The hippocampus is the center of spatial orientation and memory. Melatonin deficiency therefore induces a loss of spatial orientation and memory, hence the dizzy effect, which is the title of his song. Just as boxing makes you dizzy after a serious punch. Melatonin also regulates estrogen levels. The less melatonin there is, the more estrogen is produced, hence the feminization of the band. Of course, these dizzinesses are the consequence of copper toxicity, which produces excess melanin covering the pineal gland, preventing it from secreting melatonin. For France, the singer is dressed in a kind of white masculine wedding dress. This again represents the limbic system and the Virgin Mary, Mother of Jesus. Both represent the pineal gland in the center, seen from above for Mary, and from the side for Jesus, whose representation on the cross he symbolically realizes. France represents the pituitary gland, which is also the sun, located in front of the pineal gland, which is Germany, also representing the moon. We have seen that the birth of the New World Order symbolically leads to severe postpartum diabetes, with the pituitary gland being the most affected and becoming necrotic. This implies a deficiency in the hormones produced by the pituitary gland. In particular, the hormone oxytocin, secreted by the hypothalamus, is the love hormone and is stored in the posterior pituitary gland. It is the pituitary gland which normally releases this hormone into the body according to its physiological needs. However, its state of necrosis prevents it from doing so, resulting in a deficiency of this hormone, which leads to a state of anxiety and a lack of sociability and emotional sensitivity. This explains why the title of the song is Mon Amour, meaning my love. His name is Sleeman, which means man of peace, a peace that is of course only possible thanks to oxytocin. We would also point out that the French region corresponding to the posterior pituitary, where oxytocin is stored, is Lorraine. This is precisely where the Cattenom power plant is to be destroyed. Which brings us to the second and very important consequence of copper vaccines, genetic castration. The winner is Switzerland's Nemo, also non-gendered, and therefore a weakening of man's natural aggressiveness. His name is Nemo, which backwards is Omen. Omen is what will happen to the injected man.
I didn't just break the code, I also broke the trophy. And I broke my thumb as well. It's okay.
The title of his song is The Code, a reference to the genetic code he claims to have broken. As he hands over the trophy, he drops it and breaks it, injuring his thumb. The trophy is an old-fashioned microphone. The purpose of a microphone is to amplify the sound of the voice. Remember the enhancer 13 gene, which amplifies the production of the SOX9 protein for the formation of male testicles. By breaking the microphone, he symbolically breaks the activation of the enhancer 13 gene, and thus stops the formation of testicles. At the same time, he injures his thumb, which obviously represents the zinc finger that binds to DNA for reading, and which is contained in the SRY proteins and enhancer 13 activator, needed for testicle formation. Moreover, the French singer moves away from his microphone to sing a cappella, meaning that the microphone is no longer necessary or obsolete. There is also a protein called DNA polymerase, which is essential for DNA duplication, also containing a DNA binding zinc finger domain, but also a domain called the thumb. Alteration of DNA duplication by copper causes degenerative diseases, mutations, and greatly reduces life expectancy, contributing to accelerated cell aging. During Nemo's performance, we notice an eclipse. The eclipse represents two significant elements. The first is the Jesus crown, which is in fact a special neuron bundle surrounding the pineal gland and the brain, acting as an amplifier of the pineal diamond's reasoning, hence, once again, the breaking of the microphone amplifying the voice. According to certain scientific studies, this particular network of neurons is the center of consciousness. Of course, with the complicity of the pineal activated at its center. Switzerland, the country of the victorious Nemo, represents this network, which, in phase with the pineal, opens the portal to the beyond. This is reflected in the CERN particle accelerator in Switzerland, where the God particle or Higgs boson was discovered. The torque or necklace of the Celtic god Cernunnos represents this network too, which is the origin of CERN's name. The crown of Jesus was given to Nemo after his victory by the Singer of Ireland. Ireland represents a part attached to the hippocampus, which is the United Kingdom, called the amygdala gland. The amygdala gland is the fear center for the survival instinct, the fight or flight instinct in the face of imminent danger. This is why, in a way, the band representing Ireland has a frightening appearance. Fear leads to a state of stress, and therefore oxidative stress, which is harmful to neurons, particularly those in the network associated with Jesus' crown. So, the passage of the crown from Ireland to Switzerland symbolizes neurodegeneration, the collapse of intelligence, and the degradation of consciousness. The second symbolism of the crown relates to DNA. DNA is made up of two types of nucleotides, purines and pyrimidines. The word pyrimidines comes from pyros, meaning fire. In particular, pyrimidines are made up of a single ring of atoms, unlike purines, which contain two rings. Pyrimidines are therefore defined as circles of fire, symbolically characterized by the total eclipse of the sun, also known as the solar corona. In DNA, the one and only nucleotide that binds to the zinc finger is a pyrimidine called cytosine. So here, we see the symbolism of copper replacing zinc in the zinc finger for its binding to DNA and thus to cytosine. Indeed, Nemo represents copper in front of the eclipse, the ring of fire, cytosine. It should also be noted that in Jules Verne's work, Captain Nemo is an advanced technology scientist who hates humanity and has created a revolutionary submarine called the Nautilus. This submarine is essentially composed of copper. Its refuge is a volcanic island associated with the ring of fire, cytosine, and it resembles a syringe. The Nautilus is also a hermaphroditic marine mollusk with copper-based blood.
Nemo, newcomer of orange and white, you have been called forth to the summit of Mount Wanahakalugi to join with us in the fraternal bonds of Tankfoot.
We want you in our club, kid.
Really?
If you are able to swim through the Ring of Fire! Turn on the Ring of Fire. The Ring of Fire! You said you could do it. The Ring of Fire!